After studying this module, you'll be able to know what is anthropometry, what is the history of anthropometry, the significance of anthropometry, and different subdivisions of anthropometry. So students, let us see what it is anthropometry. Two of the most commonly used method, which are the characteristics of living and skeletal remains, are the metric assessment, that is anthropometry, and morphological assessment, that is anthroscopy. Origin of these methods go back to the 18th century when there was a great deal of interest in human diversity, especially of those who had just been discovered by the colonizing European nations. The word anthropometry has been derived from Greek words anthropos, which means man, and metron refers to the measure. The literal definition of anthropometry could be rightly stated as the discipline that deals with the bodily measurements like body size, shape, strength, and working capacity. Anthropometry involves systematic measurements of the physical dimensions of the human body. Earlier, it was used for personal identification, to understand the physical variation between human beings, and also to relate the physical traits of a person to particular racial or psychological horizons. Today, anthropometry is an important part of various industries where ergonomics is the essential tool in understanding the relation between the physical measurements of humans and the products used by them, such as clothing, vehicles, electronic gadgets, etc. Changes in the lifestyle, nutrition, and ethnic composition of populations led to changes in the distribution of body dimension. For example, the obesity epidemic, and it required regular updating of anthropometric data collections. Anthropometry is often viewed as a traditional and perhaps the basic tool of biological anthropology, but it has been used as an application to the criminal justice system. Anthropometry is a vast discipline, so are its applications. Since anthropometry is the systematic study of human measurements, dimensions taken are internationally agreed and standardized linear and angular measurements. If the dimensions are taken from a particular region of the human body, the techniques may have a different name, such as cephalometry for the head, craniometry for the skull, and osteometry for the skeletal system. There are many different data collection forms that list measurements to be taken from a living person and from skeleton. To these may be added other to suit the research interest of the investigator. These are also the general terms which are referred to various aspects of anthropometry, and it also works as a tool in ante-mortem and post-mortem identification. Homo sapiens are the species which imbibes in itself the whole mankind, yet Not a single person is comprehensively exactly alike to the other. The monozygotic twins could be an exception due to their facial likeness, but they also do differ in other dimensions, most significant of which is dermatoglyphics. Every human being lives in a different kind of habitat, be it geographical or be it demographical, and it is influenced by it to varying degrees. During the whole lifespan, every individual goes through a degree of changes which happen both internally and externally. And anthropometry is the science which deals with the measurement of these changes, no matter whether the individual is alive or long dead. On the other hand, anthroscopy is the branch which deals with the morphological assessment of the characteristics of living and skeletal remains. On the other hand, anthroscopy is more complex and it requires years of experience in assessing the variation of a feature in different populations. The assessment criteria used in this technique are also at the very root of anthropometry. That is, anything that has a morphological variation can be observed with naked eye and can also be measured. So students, now let us see what was the history of anthropometry and how it developed. The initial interest in anthropometry developed in 18th century in order to understand the intriguing diversity in the living beings. In the following years, further development was acquired in the discipline in order to attain a greater knowledge pertaining to the ethnic classification of human beings. Anthropometry, it played an important role in the beginning of the 20th century in understanding the process of evolution. In the later part of the 20th century, the center of the interest shifted from ethnicity to forensic anthropology. In 1882, Frenchman Alphonse Bertillon, who was an officer in the French police department, he devised an application of anthropometry, which was a systematic classification of criminals, especially repeat offenders. He understood the significance of anthropometry as a science of identification when he came to know about the three basic ideas. And the ideas were, the first was the absence of any changes in the bone from the age of 20 till the time of Earth. The second idea was the great difference of measurements present in the skeleton of one individual contrasted with those in other. And the last one was the simplicity and relative accuracy with which certain measurements of the bone structure of a living individual can be measured using calipers and other such tools. This arrangement of recognizable proof spread quickly through a great part of the world, yet the framework was not acknowledged much in perspective of some other significant methods, such as the use of fingerprints for personal identification. Students, now I will tell you about the significance of anthropometry. The anthropometric attributes have direct association with sex, shape and form of an individual, and these variables are personally connected with one another and they are resultant of various internal structures and tissue parts which are impacted by ecological and hereditary variables. Anthropometric information is accepted to possess objectivity and they permit the forensic expert to go past subjective appraisals. For example, comparable or distinctive. With this anthropometric information, the expert has the capacity to evaluate the level of contrast or likeness and the certainty with which this information can interpreted. The objective of anthropometrist working in a pharmaceutical or medico-legal division working with unknown variables were to depict the remaining parts in such term so that one can accomplish the objective of assessing age at the time of death, sex, race, ethnicity, stature, body weight, subtle elements of individualizing qualities such as amputations, fractures, deformities and bone pathologies, and to some extent the cause of death if it was reflected in the remains or bones. The target is to empower the low authorization organization to accomplish a definitive objective of individual distinguishing proof. Krogman, in his celebrated publication which was entitled as The Human Skeletal in Forensic Medicine, depicts that the utilization of anthropometry may emerge under a few arrangement of circumstances, that is normal, deliberate and inadvertent, such as in the cases of war dead, air crash, street, train mishaps, earth shudder, surge, fire, purposely mutilation, distortion, beating, gouging and so on of the dead body. Forensic anthropometry consolidates the vast majority of method starting with the examination of human skeletal remains from archaeological sites. The two fields have been firmly associated. An ethical anthropologist must by definition be an expert skeletal biologist. The ethical anthropologist helps a pathologist to recreate the state of deceased at the time of post-mortem examination and sometimes giving ideas or reproducing the circumstances encompassing the death of the individuals. Students, now I will tell you about different subdivisions of anthropometry. Anthropometry can be subdivided into somatometry, which includes cephalometry, and it again divided into osteometry, which includes craniometry. First, we will talk about somatometry. Somatometry is basically the estimation of living body including the head and face. It is considered as a noteworthy method in the investigation of human natural variability including morphological variations. Somatometry is the estimation of the living body including the head and face. It is considered as a noteworthy method in the investigation of human natural variability including morphological variations. Somatometry is also helpful in the investigation of age estimation from diverse body fragments in a given arrangement of people. In spite of the fact, the description will differ from study to study. It ought to incorporate information like date of birth, age, sex, ethnic gathering, geographic area, financial status, and so forth. Age ought to be communicated in days up to the age of 1 month. From that point, decimals of year need to be utilized. Atala and Marshall, they portrayed a strategy to evaluate sequential age from distinctive body section in British young men and young ladies utilizing somatometric procedures. They utilized 7 body estimation to gauge the ordered age of an infant and assess the exactness of estimation, and after that they examined the application of this study on living in addition on bodies. Numerous scientists, they have utilized somatometry widely in the estimation of stature from distinctive body parts. One of the principal studies is by Bhatnagar et al., which was done on Punjabi males. In their study, notwithstanding stature, 3 anthropometric estimations were taken, each of left and right hands independently. Mathematical equations were computed to gauge stature from these hand estimations. A comparable sort of study was also led by Abdel Malik et al. On Egyptian subjects. They took 2 somatometric measurements of the hands and effectively reduced the stature by figuring numerous equations. Jason et al. They evaluated stature from the length of the cervical, thoracic, lumbar, thoracolumbar and cervico-thoracolumbar portion of the spine in white and dark American individuals. Whereas Krishna and Sharma, they directed a study on the respective asymmetry and estimation of stature from arms and its varied sections on a Punjabi population, and they figured mathematical regression equation. Ojeslan et al. They led another study on the estimation of stature from body parts. They discovered anthropometric relationship in the stature and 7 somatometric estimation of the lower appendages and devised regression coefficient, and standard error of estimate was used to calculate stature of the person. The next is osteometry. Let us see what it is. Osteometry is the study and the measurement of human or animal skeleton, especially in an anthropological or archaeological context. In zooarchaeology, the main goal of osteometry is taxonomic determination and, to a lesser extent, determination of sex. Usually, it is very difficult to discriminate between different species of the same genus or family. For example, South American camelids. And the statistical analysis of osteometric parameters is quite useful. In bioarchaeology, osteometry is very useful to solve many anthropological problems about past human populations. For example, it may be used to determine kinship, sex, the degree of sex dimorphism, and even ethnicity. There are many problems around the interpretation of osteometric data, such as loose replicability of the measurements, problem relative to the phenotypic variations between subpopulation of one species. It also incorporates the estimation of the skeleton and its parts, that is, the estimation of bones including skull. It is characterized as a system to take measurements on the skeletal remains. Therefore, this procedure, a researcher can examine variety in skeletons of distinctive population of the world. The study has been effectively utilized as a part of the estimation of stature, age, sex, and race in legal and legitimate sciences. These four parameters, that is, age, sex, race, and stature, they are considered as the huge force of measurable human sciences. Different studies have been led and are in advancement in numerous parts of the world in such manner. The first and most important application of osteometry is in estimation of stature. There are different approaches to estimate stature from bones. However, the most simplest and the dependable strategy is by regression equations. Previously, researchers have utilized every single bone of the human skeleton right from femur to metacarpals in estimation of stature. They all have come to a typical conclusion that stature can be assessed with a great exactness even from the smallest bone, despite the fact that they have experienced a little lapse of evaluation in their studies. A few authors, they have utilized pieces of the long bones, that is upper or lower extremities, and so on. However, more often long bones have been utilized as a part of the determination of stature in light of the fact that they generally give better exactness in the estimation of stature. The real trouble in deducing a stature estimation equation is the non-accessibility of skeletal arrangement with known body height information. The Herman-Todd Terry collection and the Raymond-Dart skeletal collections are the best accumulation in such manner. Because of the general diurnal variety in stature, one ought to abstain from taking stature estimation at diverse time of the day. It means that while making standard or reference information for stature estimation, watchful thought should be given to the time at which measurements are to be recorded. Sex determination. Sex is considered as one of the least demanding determination from the skeletal material, and it is a standout amongst the most dependable if the fundamental parts of the skeleton are accessible in a good condition. The frequently picked bone for the determination of sex are the pelvis and the skull. Despite the fact that the round head of the ball socket joint, likewise give extremely dependable method for deciding sex. Sex determination is likewise expected to be reliable when the remains are from long bones and up to 95% precision can be accomplished from them. Students, now we are seeing the male and female skull. The basic difference is shown in the image. As you can see in the image, the male skull is heavier and bigger, whereas the female skull is lighter and smaller. The supraorbital ridges in the male skull are medium to heavier, whereas in females the supraorbital ridges are smaller to absent. The orbital sockets in male skulls are roundish or squarish in shape, whereas in female skull the orbital sockets are almost roundish, and in females these sockets are having sharp border. The canines of the male skulls are comparatively larger than the female skull. Similarly, the another demarcating difference is the male skull has a squarish chin, whereas the female skull has roundish chin. Similarly, the next image is showing you the sex determination from male and female pelvis. As you can see in the diagram, the male pelvis is bigger and the female pelvis is comparatively smaller. In the pubis symphysis in the male pelvis, which is the cartilaginous joint which joins the left and right pubic bone, is placed at higher position, whereas in females the pubis symphysis is placed at the lower level. The pubic bone in males, it is triangular in shape, whereas in females it is almost roundish or squarish. The pubic angle which is placed below pubis symphysis is V angle, whereas in females the pubic angle is U-shaped. Anthropometry is being utilized more regularly as a part of sexing the skeletal remains. Around the world, different studies have been led on the determination of sex from a mixed bag of human bones, that is skull, pelvis, long bones, scapula, clavicle, and the bones like metatarsal, metacarpal, phalanges, patella, vertebrae, and ribs, and so on. Now, I will be talking about race determination. The determination of race is not all that straightforward. Regardless of a few multivariate factual investigation of particular estimation of the skull and a couple of long bones, this is still a standout amongst the most disputed area in the discipline of skeletal identification. The race determination is further confused by another central point, that is, one may experience inherent variability in every major ethnic population or hereditary groups. So students, now let us see what we have studied in this module. The anthropometry and anthroscopy has been the most important research tool in biological and forensic anthropology. These two methods of observation and data collection can be made both on the living and on the skeletonized human remains. As research tools, they have contributed to the analysis of human variation in terms of race, sex, and body dimensions such as stature. These areas of research have explained those dimensions and morphological features that describe sexual dimorphism and the differences between sexes that may have been caused by social and physical environment factors or simply by evolutionary mechanism such as selection. The forensic anthropological anthropometric dimensions have been used to develop many discriminant formulae to determine sex and race from the skeleton. They are also used to estimate stature from long bones. These and other uses assist the police in identifying both the unknown victim and the culprit who may have committed the crime.